Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 29 of Security Matters with the Coffee Squad. We have a great guest today. We're lucky we could get him and get a 45 minutes to an hour's worth of his time. Mike Erwin, guru on leadership. He's going to talk to us about what leadership means and kind of how he fell into that role. So to reiterate our outline, like we do with everyone, every episode, we start with what we're drinking. We are the Coffee Squad. Then we'll go to the question of the week, followed by articles of the week, and then the topic of the week. Again, we're talking about leadership. So without further ado, let me introduce Mike Erwin. So Mike was introduced to me by Drew Stamp, a former third group teammate of mine. Mike was also in third group with us as well. Mike is the founder and executive director of Team Red, White, and Blue. He is the CEO of the Character and Leadership Center. He is the co-founder and president of the Positivity Project. He is an author. He co-authored Lead Yourself First, and he is currently a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserves as he is an assistant professor at the United States Military Academy, West Point, where he teaches leadership and psychology. And last but not least, and probably the most important thing, Mike is a father and a husband. So, Mike, I don't know if I missed anything there. I don't know how you sleep. I don't know how you have time and all this energy to do this, and you always have a smile on your face, man, which is awesome. I would probably be dragging. So if you don't mind, just introduce yourself a little bit to us, and then we'll kind of get going.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's ironic, right, when we talk about coffee, because that's part of it. So I drink a fair amount of coffee in a given day. So but yeah, and for the question to what I'm drinking, so, one of Team Red, White, and Blue's big partners is Starbucks. They've gotten behind us a lot over the past 4 or 5 years. Most people don't know, but Howard Schultz, his father served in World War II. And so they've had a pretty big military and veteran initiative since 2013. So right now I'm just drinking my standard Pike's Place roast, which is my kind of like my staple go-to. But yeah, so first of all, great to be here. Yeah, that last part definitely is the most important. I live on 32 acres just outside, of Pinehurst in North Carolina. And it's a big day here actually on Saturday. We're processing 72 chickens. So wow. For the first time. So I'm also growing my own turkeys this year. And so I've never done any of this stuff before. I'm totally learning on the fly how to do it all. But I've got a bunch of former guys from group who are going to come over and kind of help and teach me some of it. But that's a big part of what we do here is we're starting to learn a little bit more about how just food ends up on your table, right? That kind of stuff. And, awesome. There's so many powerful leadership lessons that I learned by living on the land as well. But really great to be here and excited to jump into the conversation about leadership and sort of all things that are tentacles of that word.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Mike. So, Will, what are you drinking?
So today I'm drinking my Black Rifle Coffee Company Thin Blue Line. Medium roast. It's kind of my go-to from them. It's probably my favorite one. Well, second favorite. I like that Liberty roast that they do like once a year, but that's kind of my go-to from Black Rifle.
Nice.
What about you, Jake? What kind of water are you drinking?
I'm rocking the LaCroix. This one's a mango. And it's funny. So about a year ago, when I was a defense contractor, I was working out in Mississippi doing evaluations for the infantry, and we were stuck out there where we were in Mississippi was like in the middle of nowhere. It was like an hour to get anything to eat or drink. And a buddy of mine tossed me a LaCroix. I'm like, dude, I don't drink sparkling water. And sure enough, it was a mango. It was about 100 degrees with, pure humidity out there. And so whenever I crack open a mango LaCroix, man, it always brings me back to those nasty, swampy, hot, miserable Mississippi days. So nice. That's what I'm drinking and some water. So. And Mike, of course, you told us about your coffee, the Starbucks. So I think that's awesome. And Mr. Schultz, his support and Starbucks support to the military is a lot of people don't know that, they got a bad rap, I'd say early on with some stuff. So that's good to hear, and it's kind of good to push that, the positivity that's out there. So
that's it.
Yeah. Will, what's the question of the week?
So the good question of the week, I mean, especially since we have Mike on, and as you can tell, he's definitely into fitness. How has COVID changed the way you train or work out?
Yeah,
Jake,
it's
go
yeah,
ahead, Mike.
it's okay, yeah. I mean, bottom line is like this is something I talk about with so many people right now. Obviously there's been lots of changes. Having gyms been shut down and things like that. But what we know is that being outside and being physically active, that combination, right? That's about one of the best things you can do for yourself to, number one, reduce the likelihood that you get COVID, or that if you do that it's not as severe. So it's one of those things that you do have control over. Obviously there's a lot of talk about masks and, distancing and washing your hands and not touching your face, but geez, there's also some of these things that we can do. And so for me, it's really kind of pushed my exercise, obviously, to my land and staying here, less stuff out there like at a park or, on trails, and have really figured it out here. And a big part of it has also been with my kids. So like we basically every morning we do our farm chores at 6:30 to 7, and then 7:15 to about 7:45 we exercise together. And that's really good, not just from a fitness standpoint, but also from a mood standpoint, right? It's a good way to help start the day. As the Army, certainly taught me a long time ago, the power of working out in the morning, because I've learned this over and over again. When you push working out to like midday or afternoon, it's like the probability that you don't work out goes way up, right? Because things pop up, fires start burning, you lose motivation, right? So when you build it into your habit, that you make it part of your morning routine, like you're going to get it in, and then you draw the benefits of that all day long, psychologically and physically. So that's really been the big change in my workout routine since COVID.
Yeah, Mike, man, I dig that. I think, I've helped out with a lot of veteran organizations out there. And I think everyone right now looking back that I've helped out with, you're outside. There's nothing that you're inside doing. You're not on a computer. You're not, and they do, there's the video game competitions that they do. I don't play video games, so that's easy for me not to get involved with. But everything is outside, whether it's golf, whether it's surfing, backpacking, fishing, anything. And so I think, with COVID and to Will's question of, I think it's forced more people to go outside. And I hope people realize like the benefits of, the vitamin D of the sun, and that clean air and just kind of just getting out. I know for me, it's getting out, whether I'm on the paddleboard or, going for a short little 2-mile run, I feel so much better, afterwards, in a sense of accomplishment. So thanks, Mike. Will, what do you do?
Not as much as I should, that's for sure. But it's definitely changed how, my gym's been closed for most of the time. They've opened up recently. They do a lot more of their classes and stuff outside. But I've actually found myself not wanting to go to the gym and preferring to walk around the neighborhood, ride my bike. And, now that the tourist season is almost over, I'll go out to the beach and walk on the beach a little bit too. So I think outside, like Mike said, is definitely the thing now. I just have to get that built into my early morning routine again.
I'm telling you, like it's the middle. I mean, like it's just, and it's amazing to see, like on the days when I can't get to it in the morning, like almost never happens, So when you make it happen in the morning, it just, again, like you don't really have an excuse not to, other than I'm tired, right? And when you get up and you put your shoes on and you go, like, the big thing too is think about it, you're drawing the benefits of that all day long versus having it hanging over your head all day long. I don't know how people like work out, like, after dinner or like in the evenings. Like it's just, even if you love working out, like you still don't love work. If you love working out, you're not working out really that well, honestly, because like you should be suffering at some point in there and not want to do it. Like that's part of working out, of vigorous exercise. So even people like, I love working out, like, yeah, so do I, but I also hate it. So, right. Sure.
And like you mentioned up, after dinner, like I've done that before, at certain times, but I always notice that I have a high, you talk about that high of after working out. So it takes me longer to fall asleep if I work out later in the evening than if I just would have done it in the morning, or even, take a break at lunchtime if you want to do a 2-a-day or something. So my 2-a-day days are over, but it was always morning and lunchtime for us.
Yeah, me too. So, when it was 2 days.
Yeah. All right, Will. What's your article this week?
So the article I picked was how, we've been talking off and on over the last few months, I guess, is the tit for tat that Iran and U.S. has kind of gone back and forth. And now Iran has it's come out that Iran's possibly planning a retaliation in the Soleimani killing. So they're,
I just call him salami.
Salami, yeah, the salami. And so they're, Iran's saying that they're planning a retaliation, and Trump came out and said that, it'll be 1,000 times greater in magnitude if it will be our response. And so, of course, Iran saying that it's a strategic mistake, and just all the posturing and stuff. It's just, I don't say I enjoy, but I'm interested in all the political stuff and the geopolitics and the posturing and stuff that happens especially over in the Middle East. Yeah. with him, getting the peace treaty or the peace stuff going on with the UAE and another country just recently.
Bahrain.
I can't think of it right up. Bahrain. So,
yeah. Mike, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, the word posturing comes up a lot, right? The idea of it's almost like it's psyops, right? But it's marketing, right? It's like super strategic marketing about when people say stuff and I did have some serious concerns, in the immediate deaths of Soleimani, when being targeted and killed, thinking through, that there was some possibilities, knowing that, there are sleeper cells all throughout the world, but I have not seen, a lot of those fears, played out, at least as of yet. But I also know that, a lot of people out there are long-term thinkers and they play the long game. And the potential of lulling people to sleep and thinking that things are safe and secure is something that people can get really good at. So yeah, the posturing is very real, and people are trying to get their message out there. We'll see how it all shakes out, but yeah, it is definitely entertaining, in terms of seeing how it's this super strategic game of chess based on what people say and what they do at the strategic level.
Well, at the moment, it seems like the U.S. is kind of tearing itself apart from the inside out, so they might just let that play out and see how it goes.
Yeah, that's for sure.
What's that saying over in the Middle East? Westerners have the watches, but we have the time.
Yeah,
And to Mike's point, they're very. I mean, they lull you to sleep. And right when you think it's, you're safe, you're good, and that's when they strike. So their patience is absolutely incredible. If you read, the Muslim Brotherhood, and their long-term gain, and they knew it'd be a long-term role, and you're starting to see it, in the early 1900s and where it is today. You see those gains and those checkpoints, those measures that they've hit. So.
Yeah, the patience is incredible, like you just said. I mean, when you think down to, and especially how impatient Americans are, and especially that's been accelerated by the instant gratification world that we live in, right? So people's patience is the swipe culture, right? People don't have the patience to sit through anything that doesn't entertain them or captivate their attention for, more than a few seconds. Hence your point, about the tearing ourselves apart from the inside. It's because people are continuing to fuel outrage and to push things because that's what pulls people in, right? It pulls people in by their emotions, and they are the opposite of that, right? They are willing to play the super strategic long game. And I think that's something that I agree with you. There are a lot of people around the world are looking at the United States right now and quite pleased, seeing some of the internal massive conflicts that we have and seeing attacking from the inside out.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with massive. It's this isn't a little bit Antifa, and I'm not. So you have protests, and there are legitimate protesters out there, and then you have a big swath of rioters out there. I don't know if I was an enemy state out there, that I've paid for this propaganda over decades and decades and decades, and keep funneling more money and training to them. It's a success story. It is the ultimate unconventional modernization use of unconventional warfare, in my opinion. So it's sad what's happening on our streets and within our own borders. And hopefully there comes an end to this, and it's not too bloody. So
what's your article, Jake?
Yeah, so let's move away from
Debbie Downer.
I don't know if mine's any better, So we talk about the hurricanes quite a bit because this is security, and we always talk about planning and being prepared. And so earlier in the year, the National Hurricane Center kind of issued a warning saying, "Hey, we think this is going to be a really bad hurricane season." And right now, we are almost running out of named storms.
Yep.
We have Sally turning up the Gulf Coast right now, the Panhandle, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. I think it's a Cat 2 right now. That last time I checked before I came on here. And then and then you have Teddy, which is out in the Mid-Atlantic that they think could be potentially a Category 3 heading over Bermuda. And then you have Vicky that's kind of just lingering out there too, and they don't know what's going to happen. So, Louisiana and the Gulf Coast has been kind of hit pretty hard so far with this hurricane season. Luckily, us on the East Coast here in North Carolina, we've been spared. There was a direct hit about a month ago, but heed those warnings. Look at the news. Pay attention to the Weather Channel and any other sources that are out there, and just be prepared for what's coming. I think the next 3 weeks could be very devastating for people, in those hurricane impact zones. So
I think Sally's going to be kind of like Florence, it's moving extremely slow, so they could have some, pretty bad flooding and stuff down there. Teddy, depending on which it goes, it could hit us or Bermuda or take that right turn. And what I saw this morning was Vicky just kind of out there lingering, doing her own thing in the middle of the Atlantic, and we should be pretty safe with that. So, God, it's only been a month since we had that last hurricane. It feels like a year ago. Yeah.
So get those generators ready, everything else, food, all that stuff prepared, and talking about, the presidential elections and all this stuff going on, we've mentioned, hey, November 3rd, we're 49 days away now, I think,
49,
from the election, and the aftermath, of if you're a shop owner, store owner, even just your average citizen, maybe be prepared, have a few supplies and everything on hand. Just, I don't want to be that conspiracy theorist out there saying, hey, but things aren't looking good right now. If you're kind of putting the puzzle pieces together, just be prepared. And I think that was, the point with the article with the hurricanes, and now, talking about the election. So let's talk about leadership. Let's talk about something positive and fun and not so doom and gloom. So Mike, tell us how you kind of came onto this leadership path that you've taken, and kind of what it means to you to be a leader and why leadership is important.
Yeah. So, it started for me, my leadership journey started when I was at West Point as a cadet, and I was there 1998 to 02. And then, I served 13 years on active duty in the Army. Part of that time, after 3 deployments, was I went to grad school at the University of Michigan, and I studied positive psychology and leadership for my thesis. And then I went and I taught at West Point and became promoted into an assistant professor role. And really have kind of stuck with it ever since, having, co-authored a book on leadership, having founded and led Team Red, White, and Blue, having co-founded and leading the Positivity Project, doing leadership development for companies, for organizations. So so much of what I do kind of, comes crashing together, in all this work that stitches together positive psychology and leadership. So it's amazing to think that, 10 years ago I was really for the first time ever, after my undergraduate degree, studying leadership in grad school. And it gave me a much deeper sense of appreciation for the complexity of leadership, is what I would say and summarize, in a few sentences. I think a lot of people we take complex ideas and complex things, and we try to, as human beings, simplify them to make them more digestible and more understandable. And when you get at leadership, what I've come to realize with extreme confidence is that it is wildly complicated, and that it's actually dangerous to try to simplify it. Just lead by example and take care of the troops. You know what I mean? Yeah, true. But just think about the difference in leadership when you find yourself in an environment where things are going really well, and you inherit a winning team or a winning program where things are going great, versus when you step into a turnaround situation, whether you're a company or a team or a military unit where the previous, NCO and officer leaders were terrible. It doesn't matter. You have to think about how to lead differently. Are you leading people that are already highly motivated, or are you leading people that need a boot in the can? Are you building relationships with people? How are you holding people accountable? How are you developing people so that they're growing? And we talk about this in the military a lot, right? Someone, gets shot, next man up. right? Like next person needs to be ready to step up into that leadership role. How are you taking care at the same time, looking out for the safety, the well-being of the people that you lead? How do you approach them from a discipline standpoint when things don't go well or they drop the ball? Like there's so much that goes into leadership that it's unbelievable. And I think that to be really effective at it, I've gained just a much deeper sense of appreciation. You've got to become a student of it. You've got to become like obsessed by reading about it, listening to podcasts, reading books, having conversations, etc. And that when you do that, it gives you and it arms you with the capacity to lead on a level and on a plane that other people who just sort of go through the motions or just keep grinding away, right? Like, and they just keep doing work. Is like leadership is not doing the work. That's part of it, but it's really about getting other people to do the work, right? And to do it in a motivated and an inspired way.
That's a great point. And I think what the military does a really good job with is they create leaders, and they create a leader. Whereas I know in my experience in the civilian world, they kind of focus on managers, not leaders. And the military does a really good job of creating leaders. You talk about that welfare, next man up mentality, the troop welfare stuff. It's just, that's one of the most positive takeaways I received personally from the military.
I would say on the lower level, yeah. Well, I totally agree with you. I think on the lower level, your lower officers and your lower enlisted people, they're constantly trying to make you be a leader. And at some point, and you can, I'd like to hear Mike's and your opinion, Will, since we all served in the military. But I think at some point in the military, there's almost like a cutoff valve. And now you go to these professional schools that they say you're going to be taught leadership, but are you really being taught leadership? Or are you really learning? Yeah. And so, yes, I would say a good portion of it is, whether it's administrative and all the other things like Mike was saying, there isn't, I don't think there's one thing or a bucket of, well, you pull these attributes out and now you're going to be a leader. I think it's so much more than that. And what I kind of saw, and again, this was my personal experience, and everyone has their own experience and their own light on that, is what I always look for in a leader was someone who held themselves accountable first and demonstrated those values. It wasn't do what I say, but do as I do. And I think in the military, you see many, many, many great examples of that. And then I would say you being in, someone on the outside wouldn't see this, but being in, you see a lot of failures at those levels as well. And you see, we always call it the wave, man. You're always riding the wave, man. You're going to have a few good, really good senior leaders, and then that wave just comes crashing down. And then you have a few good leaders, and it goes crashing down. I think that's with business and everything else. And, we just saw the Medal of Honor recipient, on Friday. What a great leader. I don't know if you guys saw his press conference there, but just the way he held himself, I was like, a legend right there, So I don't know, with you guys in the military, if you saw any of the similar type stuff with leaderships, but I think personal accountability is huge in a leadership. And, looking at the security realm now too, being a director of security for myself, like how do I get other people and coworkers to accomplish a task? Am I setting that example first? Am I putting in the hours, and am I giving them enough detail to accomplish the task? Those kinds of things. And I think that goes across the board in the security realm. If you are a leader, how are you talking to your people? Are you being that example? Are you giving them the information that they need? And then are you up to date? So, Mike, do you think leaders are made, or are they born, or do you think there's a combination of the two?
Yeah, it's a big question. So I think indisputably you have to believe that they're made. Otherwise, what's the purpose of having a West Point or having leadership development institutions? But we also know that genetically that there some people are predisposed to wanting to be in charge, right? And people wanting to have the pressure. They like the pressure of having to deliver on whatever the mission is. And so I think that it's a combination. There's definitely some component of genetics, but I also am a firm believer that so much of leadership can be taught and can be developed. And again, this might be like anything else in the world. Like you might have a lot of talent, you might be a natural, affable, likable person, right? You get to a certain point in the world when all of a sudden that doesn't carry any water because now you're facing a challenge, and your ability to be charismatic and the ability to, be likable means jack squat, right? It's, do you know how to lead in these dire moments, right, that you find yourself in? And now it becomes about how tactically proficient are you, and how much have you invested in your development as a leader, right? Because organizations have, I think, a responsibility to do this, but individuals also have a responsibility to do it for themselves, right? And have you put in the work, right? It's the kind of the proverbial, when the bright lights are shining, on Saturday night in the game, like that's when shows if you're putting in the work or not, and I think it's very easy when times are good for leaders to not put in the work, to not grow that much as a leader, and to get by, and to even be observed as being awesome. The question is, how do you lead in the storm, right? How do you lead in those moments of great adversity? And you only are able to do that if you've been made, and if you've helped to make yourself a better leader, not your pure talent, right? Or your genetically given ability to make people smile or make people motivated.
Yeah. I think my times back on the team, some of the best leaders I ever had kind of goes to that point that you're talking about, Mike, where they pushed us and pushed us and pushed us, and we're like, man, we just need a break. We just, but they're able to get that out of us and get us to perform when we're exhausted, like absolutely just dog tired. I remember one time at Fort AP Hill, we're doing pre-mission training, and we had the bright idea to run a half marathon in the morning, and then we went out to the range all day. It was hot and nasty. I think it was the August time frame, and then we were doing a close quarters battle inside some of the shoot houses, and we were screwing it up. This guy, I just finished SWIC, just finished my master's. I've been out of the game for 2 years, so I was super rusty, right? To get us to keep going, right? We're exhausted, we're tired, but then we wanted to do better, we wanted to.
Totally.
And I think that to me is the epitome of a leader, is to drag that out of you when we could have been like, hey man, we've had a long day, we've had a successful day, we did X, Y, and Z. But no, we're not going to stop till we get it right. So,
yep.
Mike, what experience would you say, like, if you could pick maybe one or two experiences that really showed you what a great leader was? Can you kind of talk to us about that and what attributes you saw?
Yeah, I think, I think of, lots of different experiences in my life where I've seen, leadership. So like natural ones will come up with be examples like, in the military, in a stressful situation, like in combat, or in, a combat zone, on a deployment when people are stressed, in the ability to calm people down, to be able to bring people together and to plan. And so I got lots of examples, both from the military experience, but I honestly think that the more sort of effective, the more preeminent examples of leadership. This goes back to, a definition of leadership by Jim Collins, right? That leadership exists in its purest form when people follow and they don't have to, and so I find a lot of that in my time in the nonprofit space. And so I've seen leaders, in Team Red, White, and Blue in the Positivity Project who, there was no obligation, no contracts, no money, nothing, just pure, they saw a need for example, the Positivity Project to come to schools. Actually, an Army veteran, a principal named Jeremy Mitchell, who just saw the need for what we were doing on character education and social emotional learning for children. And he just pushed to bring the Positivity Project and talked to lots of other people about it. And ended up now we're in over 100 schools in Michigan because of it. And in Team Red, White, and Blue, countless chapters and leaders that I've seen over the years where they just, they knew that, hey, our chapter, needs something inspirational. So for example, right now, even out in Arizona, we've got a bunch of our chapters that are virtually running the distance between Phoenix and Ground Zero, right, in the month of September. So they're covering 2,500 or 23, whatever it is, 100 miles there collectively as a team, right? So doing inspirational things and motivating people to come along for the journey and to put in the work when they don't technically have to, that to me is the most inspirational form of leadership, because it's just, it just requires something different out of people.
Yeah, I think there's nothing in it really for them. There's not like you said, a financial factor or fame factor or anything. They're just doing it for the right reason. What a great point. Well, go ahead.
I think that's a very good point. Like you said, like you both, Jake said, cut that out. But like Jake said, was the inspiring people to do what they not necessarily have to do is extremely difficult. And in the military, as a leader or as a ranking officer, if they don't do it, they face
in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, they can get Article 15. So that's an interesting and a very important point you brought up. One thing I would like to know is, how do you continue to grow as a leader?
Yeah. So I view what I call it like the leadership development stool, and it's got four components to it. One is experience. So you have to still be in the arena, and it doesn't mean that you always have to be in the arena, right? Like you've got to put the work down, when you come home, weekends, vacations. But you might not be in a leadership role in your job right now, but you might be in your volunteer life or in your family life or whatever it might be. So you have to be getting experience. Number two is you got to grow in knowledge. And it's never been easier to grow in knowledge. Back in the day, like you had to talk to somebody, and even back then, you had to get on their calendar and all this and that. It was so hard. Or read books or maybe magazine articles. Now, podcasts, such a great source of information and knowledge. The ability to read articles, read books. There's just so many things that you can do. But you've got to grow in your knowledge of what does it mean to be a leader. And even if you got all the knowledge in the world, right, at a certain point, the world changes, and therefore, people change, and therefore leadership changes, because leadership is people. And so you've got to be keeping up with the evolutions and how things are changing around you, and how people are changing, right, based upon the times. So that's number two, knowledge. Then number 3 and 4 kind of flow from 1 and 2. The third one is reflection. It's are you reflecting? Are you actually slowing down, stopping down, and thinking about, okay, how am I doing? What can I do better? What can I do more effectively, et cetera? And that's increasingly hard and increasingly rare in the world. In the information age that we live in, people struggle. They either don't know how to reflect, they forgot how to do it, or they know how to do it and they just don't think it's that important. And so you've got to be in this constant sort of process in your mind of thinking through, how am I leading? How are things going? What do I need to be doing better? Right. And then lastly is feedback. To grow as a leader, you need feedback. And it might be a personality test, but ideally it's mentors. It's getting feedback from your leader, people who are leading you, or people that you're working for, whatever it may be. You need to be able to get that feedback. It doesn't mean you need to agree with the feedback. Sometimes I get feedback and I'm like, no, I hear you, but this is why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. So at the end of the day, experience, knowledge, feedback, reflection, all 4 components. And I think you need all 4, not necessarily working in concert, but if you kind of take one of them out, just like a stool, it might stand up if you have your foot placed in the right place, but it's not necessarily gonna last, and eventually there's gonna be a problem. So,
no, I love that. I love the stool analogy. I love those 4 points. Experience, knowledge, reflection, and feedback. I think for a security personnel and a security manager, whether you're looking at security guards or you're consulting for a firm, those 4 points, I think they can transcend anywhere in any profession. But in the security arena, where you are looking, you're looking at security and the safety and well-being of your employees or your customers. I think those are 4 things that everyone should kind of wake up every day and ask yourselves, where am I at? A little compass check of where I'm at with that. Mike, can you talk to us, I guess, what advice you would give, I say young leaders, but just, I think whether young, middle-aged, old, it doesn't matter. A leader's a leader.
Yeah.
What advice you'd give to a leader in general?
So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different directions I can go with this one. I'd say that, for right now, I think that, and I read an article today, saying, I believe it said, that they're predicting, there's not gonna be enough vaccines produced, for COVID until maybe the end of 2024, right, for the world, right? You know what I mean? I think probably a lot of people have read that article and seen it and been like, oof. So to me, the big question is how is leadership changing? How is the world changing? In some of these ways are obvious, in some of these ways are not. And look, if it was that obvious, then everyone would have invested $5,000 in Amazon back in 1996.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Or lots of these other companies are going how did I not see that? Well, because if everyone saw it, then that's not how it works. Only certain people see it.
Yep.
So I think to me, the question is really around, leadership is paying attention to people and looking at how people are changing and then what you need to do differently, right, as you continue to grow. But I do think that the biggest thing is, I'm such a huge believer, and this goes into the book that I co-authored, Lead Yourself First, is the importance of reflection. I say it all the time, but the ability to engage in solitude, separating your mind from the input, from all the devices and all the noise of the world, and being able to get inside your own brain and not like run from that, is not only more important than ever, but it's more rare than ever. So I say it's a competitive advantage to be able to do that. Because if you just go, knock down targets and just keep going and running really fast, eventually you're gonna like what happens in a car, right? If you just go, like eventually the gas pedal hits the floor and like you can't go any faster. And what happens when you're going that fast? Like one small turn, right, and you can be in a whole world of hurt. So it's the whole idea of slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? We've all heard that phrase in the military, but like you got to slow down. You have to be able to spend some time inside your own mind, and if you're not able to do that, then like you are not going to catch lots of problems before they happen. You're not going to see things before they happen as you should. And so it's the idea that I think people think because we have all the technology and all the tools to just go and literally work from where, anywhere, when, anytime, that you should, and you need to put in program in downtime and reflection time and really time to just get inside your head and think for yourself. And I think that so few leaders do that today, and those that do, it's a true competitive advantage for them.
Wow, that's
yeah.
I think on that point too, you mentioned kind of like social media and technology, right? And how information is out there for all of us. And I think one disadvantage that leaders, I think it's a little bit of both, is, if you're a major leader of a Fortune 500 company or government, whatever, a high profile leadership position, you're going to see those critiques constantly. And so how do you help leaders kind of not take it personally and have that sting, and either rise above it or absorb it and embrace that? Do you have a method to that, or is that something, that comes out when you are, giving these seminars and stuff to other leaders?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, rising above, and just to make sure I'm clear, so rising above, like when you just say that a little bit?
I think
I've never heard that question. It's good.
Let's give today's like political, and I'm sorry, I normally get questions, and when you're talking,
no, it's good.
It pops in my mind, but I think given today's not just political climate, but just the climate overall in our country and other countries with social media, everyone being so fast to point a finger, and wanting, I call it the blame game, right? Like,
right.
And so if you're a leader, right, and something bad happens, how do you help those leaders like absorb, like, hey, I guess take ownership, but then also be able to deflect some of the minutia that's going to get thrown their way?
Yeah, so I think that, so it's a great question. I like it. So I think that for me, it starts with mindset. So I go back to then Lieutenant Colonel Don Boldock, who was my battalion commander, 1st Battalion, 3rd Group, and he had a phrase called the window in the mirror. And he talked about this probably maybe once every 2 weeks, but he talked about it a lot, right? The idea of, looking out the window when things go well, looking out the window and who can you give credit to? And when things go poorly, looking in the mirror. To your point, like blame shifting is like an art. It's become like something that just, you kind of have to be good at it today, certainly in the political arena, but in lots of other arenas as well. Well, it's not really my fault. As we know, with most failures or things that go wrong, it's not one-sided, right? It's not like there's only one person responsible for it. Sometimes there is, but usually there's a little bit of a give and take there. So I think that, I think it starts with the mindset and shaping this belief of the window in the mirror. And hey, how do I, as a leader, understand that like the part of my job is to take the fall, right? And to own responsibility and say, hey, my bad. But at the same time, know that like, you can't take that too far in the world today, because lots of other people aren't doing that. And you got to be careful to to push out there too much, that, hey, I'm the one who's at fault here,
Oh, yeah.
So it is, the tension is there. I think it's hard, but I would argue that it starts with the mindset of the window and the mirror, and that, that's like a good starting place. But then from there, moving forward and acknowledging that even when things do go wrong, it's not like it's all your fault most of the time, right? As a leader,
Yeah.
That there's other factors that shape and influence it.
No, I think that's great. We, on the battlefield, right? Not everyone always comes home. I think when you're in that leadership position, you always question, you always reflect back of what could I have done different, and you beat yourself up. And I think there's some good time to reflect and look out the window, like you're saying, and then look in the mirror. And then sometimes I think it almost becomes a negative where you're constantly beating yourself up. So I think your analogy of look out the window, look at the positive, and seeing them when things do go wrong, look in the mirror, what could you have done, and then own it, and hopefully pass those lessons on, and you retain those lessons, and move forward the best you can. So, who influenced you the most as a leader?
So early age, it was, my parents had a huge impact on me as a leader. I was the oldest of four, so I had that inherent leadership responsibility, just being the oldest of four siblings. I had a Little League baseball coach. He was a Marine in Vietnam, field artillery lieutenant, Tom Nyland. Big impact. I think the most profound impact for me in terms of how that knowledge component, right, of the Stool, was Jim Collins. I had the huge honor of being essentially like his general's aide for 2 years when he was assigned to West Point. He wasn't assigned there. He accepted the nomination to be like the class of 1951 chair for the study of leadership. And I got to basically help plan his seminars and be a part of all that and watch him do his magic and work on leadership. He brought in people like Tommy Caldwell, the rock climber, and Wendy Kopp, the founder and CEO of Teach for America. And he brought in these incredible people. But most of all, I just had conversations with him over breakfast and over dinner, and I watched how he worked. And for those who've read his book called Good to Great or Built to Last, he's written, or Great by Choice, he's written, I think like 6 books, and they've sold like, 17 million copies or something crazy like that. But he and his thinking on leadership had a profound impact on me. This whole idea that, if you want to build a great organization, it takes time. If you want to become a great leader, it takes time. He talks a lot about this concept of level 5 leadership. So I'd encourage anybody who has not read Good to Great to pick that up. He's got an addendum, one that's for the social sectors that focuses on, for nonprofits and social sector organizations. But his framework and his model and all his phrases, like the 20-mile march and bullets then cannonballs and BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals. He's got so much just unique vocabulary and vernacular at how he thinks about and talks about leadership that it's absolutely incredible. And I think I would consider it mandatory reading for anybody who aspires to be, a great leader one day.
So I read his book as I was getting out of the Army. It was recommended by a business leader. And one analogy that I love that he put in his book was the bus analogy. Get the right people in the seats, get them in the bus, and that makes the bus driver, as a leader, if you get the right people on there, it makes your job so much easier. And
totally,
I think that to me, as with a young company, as we're building this thing out, is finding the right people and getting the right people, and it makes your job so much easier. So that's a
first two, then what? Yep.
Yeah. So love the book. So, Will.
So you talk about reflection and getting your mind and stuff like that. I'd be interested to know how you do it. I know a lot of times when I do it, I used to ride a bike a lot, not so much anymore, but that was kind of my time to just kind of get into myself and reflect. How do you find? I'm sure you're a big runner or a biker, right? So is that kind of your time, or is there another process that you use?
Yeah. So if you read the introduction that Jim Collins wrote for Lead Yourself First, you'll see in there, he talks about Sam Walton, founder and then CEO of Walmart, and he called tractor time. So out here living on the land now, I spend a fair amount of time filling up 5-gallon buckets of water to bring to turkeys or chickens. And, you find yourself with this time walking around doing the chores of the farm. And I usually do those on my own. Certainly running is a big one. When you go out there, run or walk on your own, that's a great time to do it. And ideally, that's the best way to do it in my view, because your body's moving, the blood's flowing through your brain faster. So there's not just the solitude, right? Isolating yourself from the input from other minds, but it's also the process of moving your body. I would also caution to say that automatically by biking or running, that's not it. If you got like you're checking your heart rate monitor and you're checking your pace every 15 seconds, like that's input, right? That's input. That's that your brain is now thinking about that, versus just saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to take my watch and I'm going to hit start. And I'm going to go run for 45 minutes, or I'm going to go run for an hour, whatever it might be. That is the way that you use running or cycling or the walk for solitude. But as soon as you bring your phone and you're listening to music, or you're listening to a podcast, or you're even talking on the phone, right? Which sometimes I do that, right? Like I'll have a conversation with someone like while I'm on a walk or on a run. I think that's totally fine. But it's making sure that you carve out elements and slices of the day where you are isolating your mind from all that noise, and you're just allowing yourself to get inside your head. The final thing I would say would be my tactical suggestion on how to do it is you can do two things. You can kind of like freestorm or just free think and just go like, hey, I'm just, just in your brain, like let all those neurons that have been firing all day long just ping around your brain like ping pong balls, right? And just see what emerges. That's a bit of a bigger risk strategy. And you might feel like you're wasting 90% of your solitude time thinking about random stuff or stuff that's not helpful. The other way is you go into the run, or you go into a period of solitude, and you have a specific question or thing that is nagging you, that is challenging you, and you intently work at it, and you think about it, and you keep bringing it back to that idea, right? Of man, we keep struggling on this, we keep making this mistake, or whatever it may be, or we're doing awesome here. Now, how do we get more of that, right? Whatever leadership decision you need to make, the key becomes, can you sustain the thought and the focus and the analysis long enough and hard enough to help you come up with a solution? And if you can, there is some deep, powerful things that transpire from those moments.
Awesome. Mike, just hearing you talk, taking little notes here for myself, and it's always good to be reminded of those, and the way you bring them up, paints a little bit of a different picture than what I've heard before. So thank you for that. I kind of want to shift gears here, as we start to close this out. I'd love for you to talk to people about, Team Red, White, and Blue, how it was started, what inspired it. And then if you can kind of shift from that to your book that you co-authored, Lead Yourself, and your other organizations that you run, and just kind of give a little bit about each of those and where our listeners and viewers can find those.
Yeah, totally. So I'd start with, Team Red, White, and Blue. So I founded it a decade ago in Michigan when I was in grad school. Our mission really is to enrich the lives of America's veterans. And how do we do that? Well, we're forging America's leading veteran health and wellness community. And so we are giving veterans a team to belong to, a community of people that will push them and challenge them and inspire them to take care of themselves, to take ownership over their physical, mental, and emotional health. 225,000 or so members across the country, 192 chapters, right? But you can just join Team Red, White, and Blue and participate in our virtual challenges that we have going on that help to motivate you to stay physically active. And from that physical activity, the mental and the emotional health benefits flow. I started with a guy, former artillery officer, Jeff Bryan. We founded the Positivity Project about 5 years ago. So our mission is to empower America's youth to build positive relationships. And so it's bringing a focus on positive psychology's 24 character traits, things like humility, integrity, gratitude, fairness, forgiveness, enthusiasm, creativity. How do we bring an understanding of those character attributes to children through their teachers from a young age, so that they can better understand themselves, they can better understand other people, and then they can build stronger, better, more positive relationships in their life. When I was in grad school, I started working on, with a federal judge, Ray Kethledge. We started working on Lead Yourself first, inspiring leadership through solitude. That was a 6-year journey from 2010 to 2016. The book then takes about a year from the time you submit the manuscript until it's all done and all that, and then it's published. So it came out about 3 years ago. And again, the focus of that book is really around the importance of solitude in the information age, with all the noise, with everything going on. it really just makes the business case, so to speak, from especially if you're in a leadership position and you have to make decisions that affect other people's life and well-being, that you don't just have the, oh, it would be good to, you have the duty and the obligation and the responsibility to do that hard, uncomfortable work inside your own mind, which is thinking hard, analysis, reflection, and looking inward so that you make the best right decisions that you possibly can. And then, started a couple of things. I started a private independent Catholic high school outside Fort Bragg called Father Vincent Capodanno High School. I chair the board there. And that's, been amazing to see. How do you build a school that's, in our case, it's different, right? We focus certainly on academics like every school does, but we also focus a lot on what we call skill, service, character, leadership, and of course, our faith. But we focus a lot on how do you develop a service mindset? How do you talk to 14 and 15-year-olds about what leadership is, and that, yes, you too can become a leader one day. And oh, by the way, you're going to get put into a leadership position, within this school next week when you're put in charge of this project or whatever it's going to be. So, we're working to groom those character strengths and those leadership skills within our students from a young age. And then, still teaching at West Point, is just a big part of what I do as well. I go up there every summer for 3 weeks, and it's awesome to be able to put the uniform back on, but also to stay current in the research of psychology and in the research of leadership. So again, lots of different hats. I prioritize my time based upon, what season I'm in and where I'm at. And so there's some days, where I surge, on something, let's say for Father Capodanno High School on a Wednesday, I teach there for 2 hours. But most of my time is spent leading Team Red, White, and Blue right now. That's where I'm the executive director, and I spend 40 to 50 hours a week, helping to build that organization and to help to enrich the lives of America's veterans, to make, as many veterans' lives better as possible by giving them, right, a sense of identity when they put this shirt on and they see, that name and that eagle looking back at them in the mirror, to help them remember their time in the service. And that if not anymore, certainly at one point in their life, that they were physically fit and that they did hard things, and that those hard things with other people is what gave them that sense of pride, to serve the country. And we want them to have those same sorts of emotions, stirred up within themselves to motivate them to take care of themselves. And ultimately, at the end of the day, right, like if we don't take care of ourselves physically, emotionally, and mentally, unfortunately, there's not a lot of other people out there to do it for us, right? So how can we motivate as many veterans as possible, 17 plus million in our country, to really, look out for their own health and wellness? And I'm super motivated by that mission every single day.
Mike, awesome. I mean, definitely just having you on here for these 45, 50 minutes right now, just inspiring, really. Meeting you a few months ago, sitting down having coffee with you, just you can feel the energy and the positive vibe that you give off. So I hope our listeners and viewers can gain that as well. There's a quote, it's on one of your websites of your business, but it's a John Quincy Adams quote, and says, "If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader." And I think, Mike, your life and how you've lived it and continue to live it, you definitely inspire me. You inspire me. I'm sitting here taking a bunch of notes like, okay, I need to do this better. Hey, I need to get up in the morning. I'm supposed to get up this morning and go paddle. I'm paddling from Catalina Island to Huntington Beach here in about 6-7 weeks. And it's just like, man, it's cold. The temperature's dropped here. I'm like, oh, I'll do it later this afternoon, after 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, after we're done eating. And it's like, nope, I just made a little note, put on my whiteboard here. It's like, no, paddle every single morning, that's what you're here to do. So thank you. Thanks for this motivational talk. I hope our listeners and viewers got a lot out of it. Just on leadership in general, doesn't matter what profession we're in. Yes, we do talk about security, and you take each one of these aspects that Mike's talked about and apply them to yourself and to your organization and to others. And so, Mike, do you want to give a little shout out where they can find your book, more information about Team Red, White, and Blue and your other organizations?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, you can go to, it's actually MikeErwin.net. So I got a website that kind of like highlights and talks about all these things for this very reason, right? So that otherwise you give out 1 million in one websites and people like don't know where to go. So just, MikeErwin.net is the website that has an aggregate of Team Red, White, and Blue, Positivity Project, Father Capodanno High School, Character and Leadership Center, Lead Yourself First, all of it's there. And that's just the best place. And I'm on social media. And you know, again, to be clear, like, while I do advocate solitude and reflection, all that doesn't mean that like you know, that you don't do email, right? Or that you go off the grid, or that you don't have a social media. Like I'm on, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter. You can find me, you know, pushing out some of these thoughts in a consistent basis.
And
Awesome.
that is Erwin with an E.
Yes. Yeah.
Sure.
A lot of people spell it Erwin with an I. So yeah, Mike ERWIN.net.
Awesome. We really appreciate you coming on, Mike. I learned a lot, and like Jake, I've been taking notes this whole time. So just want to reiterate to everybody, you know, we appreciate all your support. We have launched the YouTube channel. You can find us on youtube.com. Just search Security Matters with the Coffee Squad. Listen and subscribe to us at coffeesquadpodcast.com or search Security Matters with the Coffee Squad on your favorite podcast platform. Also give us a like and follow on Facebook, and we are on Instagram at security_matters_podcast.
Awesome.
Right, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Mike. Totally appreciate it, man. We'll have to get together soon. Grab another coffee or just hang out. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Awesome. All right, fellas. Well, thank you, and have a great day.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good one.
All right. See you guys.